He who has not conquered the ego sense does not reach the supreme state. This could be understood as either a general principle or as a bit of practical advice. Conquering the ego sense. What does that mean? It means not being caught up in the powerful emotional drives that underpin our psyche. Strong drives, strong emotions like lust, anger, greed, shame, vanity, and so on. Anything which colours our basic tone. Very often we use the language of thought, of intellect. We're not intellectual beings. We're passionate beings. Even intellectuals, if you've hung around with intellectuals, you'll find that their emotional underpinning is actually very powerful, usually quite juvenile actually. Intellectuals tend to have a very primitive set of basic emotions. So intellectualism is not something devoid of emotionalism. It's just another version of emotionalism that's been channeled into intellectual activities. So at heart we are caught up in the sway of our passions, of our drives, of our psychological and emotional needs. This is the ego sense. This is the ego sense. And if we're caught up in any aspect of that ego sense, then it's difficult to turn the attention to itself. It's difficult to touch the supreme state. So we're awash on the sea of emotions. I've often said we're awash on an ocean of notions. But these notions themselves sound very neutral, but the passion and the intensity behind them is far from neutral. A simple example is politics, especially left-wing politics. It seems to be a masquerade for hate. It doesn't matter how great the intentions are, there seems to be so much hatred in it. And yet it's hatred in the name of egalitarianism. But the reality has been revealed by those regimes that have managed to impose their so-called egalitarianism on the people. In fact, it's quite fashionable to be against religion, but more people have died at the hands of political ideology than religious ideology. Perhaps the hatred is more apparent in religious ideology than it is in political ideology. But if you look at the millions that were killed under Stalin, under Mao Zedong, under Pol Pot, under Hitler, they weren't religious ideologues, they were political ideologues. So in some ways politics has been a far more malign influence on society. But the point I'm making is that beneath any intellectual statement, beneath any religious, political statement, there is usually a powerful passion. And even in science, we can look at the example of Richard Dawkins. He's clearly a very passionate man. He has a belief about science, and he sees religion as a threat to that belief. And there's no doubting Richard Dawkins' intellectualism. His intellectualism is fueled by passion. So it's these passions that we have to acknowledge. We're very good at disguising our passion in terms of rationality. But let's look at the passion behind rationality. It's no different than the passion behind irrationality. It just expresses itself differently in various degrees of social acceptability. However, if his heart is pure, which means that we have managed to bypass our fundamental passions, Their instruction concerning spiritual understanding is able to penetrate it like a drop of oil on clean cloth. We just soak it up. We actually get the point. In this connection, I shall narrate to you an ancient legend. Long, long ago, I questioned Bhusunda. Whom do you regard as ignorant and deluded in this world? And Bhusunda, we met Bhusunda early in section 6.1, back in chapter 15. Bhusunda was an immortal crow, an old crony of Vasishta's. Bhusunda replied, "There was a celestial who lived on a hilltop. He was ignorant and devoted to sense pleasure, but he had adopted such a righteous lifestyle as would ensure a very long life." So this is a traditional idea that good actions bring rewards. After a very long time, the understanding arose in him that he should attain that state in which there was no birth nor death. Having thus made up his mind, he came to me. Having duly worshipped me, the celestial asked me, "These senses, O Lord, are constantly agitated with craving for gratification, and they are the source of endless pain and suffering. I have realized this, and hence I take refuge in your feet."